fraternity, and other stakeholders for exercising great patience and restraint as the dialogue continued. I thank the members from both sides of the talks for their commitment and dedication to national duty. After the initial tension and mistrust, which was expected, the parties gelled and worked well together. Trust returned in their ranks, and they were then able to show a strong commitment to peace and reconciliation and the strengthening of institutions and governance process in Kenya. The document the team has come up with is ultimately imperfect and unfinished, but it is a good beginning. We have agreed to disagree on the most important matter to us. We made what we believed were reasonable proposals on how to address the rising cost of living. But the government side flatly refused, terming it their exclusive business and further arguing that they got the mandate of Kenyans to execute their Kenya Kwanza economic agenda. We will be engaging Kenyans further in the coming weeks as we must, because the pain of the cost of living is really unbearable. Increased school fees besides the many crises in the education sector. Be that as it may, we have come this far because of a commitment to constructive engagement and positive energy and sacrifice for the sake of our beloved country, Kenya. Our team was able to get positive results on a number of the issues that we had set out in our demands. These include electoral justice, which encapsulates audit of the 2022 election process, restructuring and the constitution of the IEBC, increase of the timelines for the Supreme Court to hear and determine a presidential election petition from 14 to 21 days, and a commitment to the spirit of multi-party democracy. We were also able to agree on the transfer of all devolved functions and the requisite resources to the county governments, in addition to amending the constitution to provide for the equitable share of the county governments to not less than 20% of all revenue collected by the national government from the current 15%, and the establishment of the World Development Fund. We believe that these are significant reform mileages that, if implemented, can help strengthen our governance and electoral processes and safeguard the march of democracy in Kenya. Azimio, however, remains deeply disappointed that the committee was not able to agree on the one fundamental issue on which Kenyans are united across the political divide. The two teams were unable to agree on the need and the means to reduce the cost of living. This is why we have described the document the committee presented as imperfect and unfinished. It was not for lack of trying on our part that the committee was unable to agree on the issue of cost of living. Kenyans will recall that at the beginning of the talks, the Kenya Kwanza administration was adamant that cost of living would never be taken to the discussion table, let alone being discussed. The Kenya Kwanza had insisted that the only issues it was ready to discuss were the reconstitution of the IEBC, implementation of the 2/3 gender rule, entrenchment of constituency development fund, establishment and entrenchment of the office of the leader of the opposition, and the embedment of the office of Prime Cabinet Secretary. Through persistence and insistence, we forced cost of living onto the table. We had hoped that as the talks progressed, while life got harder for Kenyans, Kenya Kwanza leaders could have the empathy, soften their hearts, and agree to lessen the burden their policies had imposed on Kenyans. Our delegation pushed for the complete overhaul of the Finance Act 2023, which had come with harsh taxation measures and made and continue to make life unbearable to an overwhelming majority of Kenyans. At no expense to the government, we deployed our team of economists to recommend to the administration measures which, if adopted, would immediately bring the cost of living down. We asked the government to reduce travel budgets by 50%. We also called on the government to reduce the daily subsistence allowances for state and public officers by 30%. We further asked the government to reduce the road maintenance levy and the anti-adulteration levy by 5 shillings and 3 shillings per litre respectively. Our team further asked the government to reduce VAT on fuel from 16% to 8%. We called on the government to scrap the housing levy, or at least make it voluntary. Unfortunately, Kenya Kwanza would not budge. Apparently, as the regime's economic policies hardened life for Kenyans, so did the regime harden its heart. We realized that without the goodwill of the top echelons of the Kenya Kwanza leadership, cost of living was never going to be addressed. They told our team that the cost of living was a government issue, that they have a manifesto and the mandate of the people of Kenya to implement it. This is the hustlers, the juakali, the mamamboga, and the boda boda. Our team realized that the whole issue of cost of living is extremely sensitive in the Kenya Kwanza circles because it is a gravy train on which many corrupt interests have converged. Cost of living cannot come down because the key people in the government are eating from it. That is why cabinet secretaries and other Kenya Kwanza shareholders recently fought over oil in the high seas. We got to understand that the housing levy, which even the courts have now found to be unconstitutional, cannot be scrapped